guys, welcome back. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.
A girl was working late in an old city library. The lights were dim, only one rusty lamp glowing on her desk. While turning the pages of a dusty book, a folded letter slipped out. On it was written a strange name and an old address that now belonged to an abandoned mansion. Her heartbeat grew faster. The next day, she gathered courage and went to that mansion. The doors creaked open and a faint scent of roses filled the air as if someone had just walked by. Inside, she noticed a faded portrait on the wall. It was of a young man. His eyes seemed alive, staring straight at her. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. When she turned, the same man from the portrait was standing there. He looked real, yet unreal at the same time. His voice was soft as he said, "You found me. Now you must listen to my story." He told her about a love that had been left incomplete many years ago. His soul was trapped in the mansion, waiting for someone who could see him, someone who could understand his silence. As he spoke, she felt her heart being pulled closer to his. It was terrifying and beautiful at once, like falling in love with a secret that could never be told. The girl stood frozen, staring at the man, who looked like he had stepped out of the portrait. His presence was strange, but his eyes carried a warmth that melted her fear. He walked closer and told her that his love had once promised to return but never came back, and since then he had been waiting in this house. Night after night, century after century, his voice broke when he said he could not leave until someone loved him enough to set him free. She felt her chest tighten, as if fate had pulled her here for this very reason. She wanted to deny it, yet she could not stop herself from feeling drawn to him. The more he spoke, the more alive he looked. She touched his hand, expecting it to be cold like mist. But it was warm, trembling, and real. She gasped, and he smiled for the first time in years. He could feel again. The mansion around them seemed to shift, the walls echoing with whispers, as if the house itself was watching their moment. He leaned closer, his face inches away from hers, his voice barely a whisper. "If you kiss me now, I will either vanish forever or I will be yours forever. Are you willing to take that risk?" Her heart pounded louder than ever before. She closed her eyes, leaned in, and let destiny decide. The moment their lips touched, the air in the mansion trembled, as though the house itself had taken a long-forgotten breath. The portraits shook. The candles flickered even though no flame burned, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. When she opened her eyes, he was gone somewhere, or perhaps to someone waiting. But the warmth of his touch still lingered on her lips. She looked around. The mansion was empty, silent, yet different. The shadows felt softer, the walls less broken, as if the kiss had rewritten the story of the place. And then she saw it on the old dusty table, a single red rose, fresh, alive, glistening with dewdrops, though there had been no rain. She reached for it, her fingers trembling, and as she held it close, she heard his voice inside her mind, low, gentle, filled with a love she had never known before. "I am not gone. I am with you wherever you go." She stepped outside the mansion for the first time in decades. The air smelled of roses. A faint trail of petals marked the path ahead, as if guiding her to somewhere, or perhaps to someone waiting. The kiss had changed everything. The girl stood in the center of the mansion, clutching the rose to her chest. The silence around her was no longer empty. It felt alive, like the house itself had accepted her presence. She walked slowly down the long hallway where broken mirrors lined the walls. In each mirror, she expected to see only her own reflection, but instead there were moments, flashes of the young man's life. She saw him laughing in a garden. She saw him writing a letter. She saw him standing by a window, waiting endlessly. The deeper she went, the more the house revealed to her. It was as though her kiss had unlocked doors that had remained closed for centuries. She entered a room filled with dust-covered books. On the table lay an open diary. its ink still fresh as if someone had written it just moments ago. She read the words aloud and her hands trembled. Asterisk, if love ever returns to me, I will finally be free. Asterisk, her heart raced. Was she the return he had been waiting for? As she read, a cold wind swept through the room and the candles lit on their own, casting shadows on the walls. Suddenly, she felt him again, not standing in front of her, but surrounding her, his presence warm and protective. She whispered into the air, "Are you here with me?" And the pages of the diary turned on their own, stopping at a drawing, a sketch of her face, perfectly drawn. Though they had never met before this night, her breath caught in her throat. How could he have drawn her centuries ago? Was she part of his destiny long before she was even born? The question shook her, but at the same time filled her with a strange comfort. Maybe this love was not sudden, it was written, carved into time itself. The rose in her hand glowed faintly under the candlelight, as if answering her doubts. She turned back toward the hallway and heard footsteps again. This time they were louder, steady, approaching her. She whispered his name, though she had never spoken it before. It simply came to her lips as though her heart already knew. "Adrian," she said softly. And then, in the flicker of the candlelight, he appeared at the end of the corridor, more solid, more real than before. His eyes shone with relief, and he said only one thing, "Now you cannot leave without knowing the truth." Adrian's voice echoed in the empty corridor, soft but commanding. "You cannot leave without knowing the truth." She stepped toward him, every beat of her heart louder than the last. He looked almost alive now, his skin no longer pale like mist, but glowing faintly with warmth. She whispered, "Then show me." And before she could blink, the walls around them shifted. The mansion stretched into endless hallways, doors appearing where none had been, each one glowing faintly with secrets. He extended his hand. She hesitated, but when their fingers touched, her chest burned with a mixture of fear and desire. Together they walked into the first door. Inside was a ballroom, silent yet filled with faint music like the ghost of a melody. Chandeliers flickered to life, revealing couples dancing, their faces blurred, their movements graceful. At the center of the floor, she saw Adrian dancing with a woman whose face she could not see. Her stomach tightened with jealousy, though she didn't know why. The music stopped and every blurred figure turned its head toward her, as if recognizing her presence. The faceless woman in Adrian's arms slowly turned as well, and when her face became clear, the girl gasped. It was her own reflection, but dressed in an ancient gown. The reflection whispered words she could not hear, and then dissolved into smoke. Adrian looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Do you understand now?" She shook her head, too overwhelmed. "Not yet," she whispered, "but I want to." His smile was sorrowful, like he had been waiting centuries for that answer. They left the ballroom, and the door shut with a thunderous echo behind them. The rose in her hand pulsed with light, beating like a heart. As they moved through the next hallway, shadows clung to the walls, whispering in voices too faint to understand. "They are memories," Adrian explained quietly. "Pieces of me, pieces of you." She turned to him sharply. "Pieces of me? What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He only pressed his finger gently to her lips, his eyes pleading for patience. The next door opened into a garden, filled with moonlight though no moon shone in the sky. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors, glowing faintly like stars. At the center of the garden was a stone bench, and carved upon it was her name. Her knees weakened as she traced the letters with her trembling fingers. "How long has this been here?" she whispered. Adrian's voice was low, almost breaking. "Since the night I lost you, long before you were ever born." Her breath caught when he said those words. "Since the night I lost you." She turned to him, her heart pounding. "That can't be possible." I wasn't even alive then. Adrian's gaze softened, filled with both love and sorrow. And yet, here you are. You were always meant to return. His hand brushed her cheek, and for the first time she felt no chill, only warmth. The garden began to shift, the flowers bending toward her as if they recognized her presence. She stepped back, overwhelmed, and the rose she carried glowed brighter, almost painfully so. Adrian whispered, "This rose. It is bound to your soul. It always has been. You were mine once, in another time, another life. But fate tore us apart before our love could be fulfilled." Her eyes filled with tears. "So, what am I now? A replacement?" He shook his head fiercely. "No, you are the same. The one I lost returned to me." Suddenly, the garden darkened. The glowing flowers withered, the air turned heavy, and from the shadows emerged tall faceless figures, their whispers louder, almost angry. Adrian pulled her close, shielding her with his body. "They don't want you to know the truth," he muttered. She clung to him, terrified. "Who are they?" His voice was grave. "They are the keepers of time. They tried to erase you from me once. They will try again." The figures advanced slowly, their voices echoing like broken glass. She buried her face against Adrian's chest. "What do we do?" He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Trust me. Don't let go." She nodded, and at once the rose in her hand burned like fire. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, but did not vanish. Adrian looked into her eyes with urgency. "This is only the beginning. To truly be free, we must break the curse. But the curse lies in the last door." Her heart was pounding so hard she could hardly breathe. She tightened her grip on his hand. "Then take me there," she whispered. His lips curved into the faintest smile, full of longing and fear all at once. "If you come with me, there's no turning back." She answered without hesitation. "I was never meant to turn back." And together they stepped toward the endless hallway once more, where a single door waited glowing brighter than the rest. The final door pulsed with the golden light, as if it held the heartbeat of the mansion itself. She and Adrian stood before it, their hands tightly entwined. With a trembling push, the door opened and revealed a vast chamber filled with mirrors, stretching endlessly like 1,000 reflections of themselves. Each mirror showed a different moment of their love, different times, different worlds, different lives. In some they laughed together, in others they wept. In some they kissed as if it were the last time. At the center of the chamber stood an altar with a single rose, identical to the one in her hand. Adrian's voice was heavy. "This is where our curse began. This is where it must end." She stepped closer to the altar, her reflection in every mirror moving with her. The rose in her hand and the rose on the altar began to glow in unison, and suddenly she felt herself being pulled into every reflection at once. She saw her soul scattered across centuries, always searching for him, always losing him. Tears rolled down her face as Adrian held her close. "Now you know. You were mine in every life. You will be mine in every life after this. But if you choose me now, the cycle may finally break." His lips hovered over hers, desperate, trembling. She whispered, "And if I don't?" His eyes darkened. "Then we are doomed to repeat this forever." She pressed her rose onto the altar. A blinding light filled the chamber, and for a moment she felt the curse shatter. The shadows screamed. The mirrors cracked. The mansion trembled. She turned to Adrian, expecting him to fade like before. But this time he stood solid, alive, truly alive. He took her face in his hands and kissed her with centuries of longing. When the light faded, the mansion was gone. They stood in an empty meadow under a sky full of stars. For the first time in his immortal existence, Adrian was free. She leaned her head on his chest, smiling through her tears. "So it's over?" she whispered. He kissed her forehead gently and murmured, "No, my love, it's only beginning." And then he asked her a question that hung heavy in the night air, a question that made her shiver with both fear and desire. The final door pulsed with a golden light, as if it held the heartbeat of the mansion itself. She and Adrian stood before it, their hands tightly entwined. With a trembling push, the door opened and revealed a vast chamber filled with mirrors, stretching endlessly like 1,000 reflections of themselves. Each mirror showed a different moment of their love, different times, different worlds, different lives. In some they laughed together, in others they wept. In some they kissed as if it were the last time. At the center of the chamber stood an altar with a single rose, identical to the one in her hand. Adrian's voice was heavy. "This is where our curse began. This is where it must end." She stepped closer to the altar, her reflection in every mirror moving with her. The rose in her hand and the rose on the altar began to glow in unison, and suddenly she felt herself being pulled into every reflection at once. She saw her soul scattered across centuries, always searching for him, always losing him. Tears rolled down her face as Adrian held her close. "Now you know. You were mine in every life. You will be mine in every life after this. But if you choose me now, the cycle may finally break." His lips hovered over hers, desperate, trembling. She whispered, "And if I don't?" His eyes darkened. "Then we are doomed to repeat this forever." She pressed her rose onto the altar. A blinding light filled the chamber, and for a moment she felt the curse shatter. The shadows screamed. The mirrors cracked. The mansion trembled. She turned to Adrian, expecting him to fade like before. But this time he stood solid, alive, truly alive. He took her face in his hands and kissed her with centuries of longing. When the light faded, the mansion was gone. They stood in an empty meadow under a sky full of stars. For the first time in his immortal existence, Adrian was free. She leaned her head on his chest, smiling through her tears. "So it's over?" she whispered. He kissed her forehead gently and murmured, "No, my love. It's only beginning." And then he asked her a question that hung heavy in the night air, a question that made her shiver with both fear and desire. If this was never a curse, but a test, are you ready for what comes next?